You know, I've got a lot to say about this game. When you think of some of the most immersive and gripping stories told through the medium of war, be it past, present, or future, I can safely assume that the first name that comes to most people's mind isn't Call of Duty. For as long as the franchise has been around, it's seen its fair share of time in the spotlight for reasons ranging from good to, well, whatever this is. But throughout the almost 2-decade-long history of Call of Duty, each and every mainline game has carried with it a campaign mode, chronicling the story of one of the many soldiers of war's past and future. Of course, barring the sinus infection that was Black Ops 4. With almost 20 games under their belt, you'd think that by now one of the studios under Activision would have struck literature gold. And obviously it isn't for lack of trying. I wouldn't attribute it to the confines of gaming either, as tons of games have told incredible stories that rival cinema. And the same notion applies to the genre of shooter games, as titles like Spec Ops: The Line can attest to. Ever since the franchise shifted focus from campaign to multiplayer, the storytelling has taken a back seat. And yes, while games like Black Ops, Modern Warfare, and World at War have great stories, nothing about them is super gripping. Maybe it's the fact that I've played through these campaigns millions of times, so I don't feel as immersed each playthrough. But I still love these games, I just wouldn't consider their stories amazing. They just feel like the same generic action flick with varying degrees of okayness. But in comes Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Most futuristic Call of Duty games have gained a reputation for being okay at best and hot garbage at worst. But Infinite Warfare is an interesting case. It's the first, and at the time of recording this video, only Call of Duty game to be primarily set in space. Which, for all the shitpost and generally well-warranted criticism the multiplayer garnered,
good day, fleshy mammals.
It seems like taking to the stars may not have been such a bad idea for the campaign. Most people regard Infinite Warfare as having one of the most underrated single players in the franchise, but for each step the story takes forward, it's always followed by something that pushes it right back down the stairs. My name's Heiko, and today I want to take a look back at Call of Duty Infinite Warfare's campaign and see what went wrong and how it could have been one of the best, if not the best, campaign in the Call of Duty franchise. Now, before we dive into the game itself, we have to take a look at what was going on with Call of Duty at the time to really understand the circumstances surrounding Infinite Warfare. Ever since the game's inception in the early 2000s, Call of Duty has been based around the formula of an arcade-ish first-person shooter set in either World War II or a modern conflict. And while some games decide to take it a few years into the future with certain sci-fi elements, pretty much every game remained boots on the ground. But in 2014, Sledgehammer Games would take the series in a new direction, trying their hand at turning Call of Duty into a sort of futuristic vertical-based movement shooter. Jetpacks. They put fucking jetpacks in Call of Duty, and it sucked. For a multitude of reasons. From advanced supply drops to Kevin Spacey, Advanced Warfare was a train wreck of a game that only gets a pass nowadays because other games managed to set the bar even lower. After Advanced Warfare, Treyarch put out Black Ops 3 the following year, which followed the same formula as Advanced Warfare but with a more refined movement system. And while people liked Black Ops 3 for its fun multiplayer and arguably some of the best zombies in the franchise, the campaign was hot garbage and people were getting sick of the whole jetpack thing. As the next year rolled around, Infinity Ward stepped up to the plate to put out the game that they had been working on, which granted they had begun development on in 2013 before everyone hated the futuristic jetpack shit. But when the trailer dropped on May 2nd, yeah. As of writing, the official reveal trailer for Infinite Warfare is the 25th most disliked video on YouTube at almost 4 million dislikes. And it seems that Infinity Ward knew that this trailer wasn't going to go over well because they only showed about 2 seconds of advanced movement in the trailer, and still. Needless to say, expectations were about as low as they could get, and when it comes to the multiplayer, they still managed to disappoint, but that's a subject for another time. Everyone went into this game about as close-minded as possible, expecting the story to be an intergalactic shit show. So, how did it actually turn out? Abrupt transitions are abrupt. Hey, real quick, I'll keep it brief because I hate it when YouTubers interrupt videos, and I hate it even more when they ask you to subscribe to their channel, so I'm not going to do that. But if you already happen to be subscribed to my channel and you want to know when new videos go up, make sure you turn on notifications for the channel because YouTube doesn't automatically do that, and my upload schedule is consistently inconsistent.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man.
You can also just keep an eye out on the community tab where I occasionally post updates about video progress and other stuff. I hate that I have to put this in the fucking video, but the retention rate is so terrible that I feel like I have to. Alright, back to the video. If you haven't already picked up on how much I've covered so far and how much I've got left to cover, I'm gonna spoil the shit out of this game. So if you want to go play Infinite Warfare for yourself, of which I recommend you do if you've got some time and a bit of cash to kill, go ahead and do that. Infinite Warfare's campaign opens up with a cutscene narrated by insert generic Mr. John Call of Duty, 11th of his name, also known as the main character of this game, Nick Reyes. There's not much to say about him, he sure is a Nick and he sure is a Reyes, and that's about it. Going back to that opening cutscene, we learn that humans finally made it to space, and doing what we do best, we colonized the shit out of it. But eventually some of those space colonies, especially the Mars one, got fed up with the fact that they were getting shafted by the big bureaucrats back on Earth, not getting the proper representation they deserved in the world of, or I guess now galaxy of politics. So with nothing better to do on a Tuesday afternoon, they formed the Settlement Defense Front and revolted against the United Nations Space Alliance. Now, you might be thinking that this sounds like a pretty good setup to a story. A villain with an empathetic cause that could provide an outlet to display the challenges of fighting a war against those who you once stood beside, requiring the player to choose a side in a war which the line of right and wrong is blurred? Yeah, no. Almost immediately, that's completely thrown out the window because that would have made too much sense, something of which I doubt the people overseeing the development of this game had much of. After a short intro mission where you play as some no-name jackass who gets his shit rocked, we're introduced to Kit Harington. And just to show you how much of a forgettable villain Spaceman over here is, throughout most of my time with the game and now as I write this script, I completely forgot what his name was. All of my notes for this video just have him down as Kit Harington because I genuinely forgot the name of the main villain. And by the way, if you want a massive overlooming force to impose upon the player to make them feel against the odds, you don't cast Kit fucking Harington as their leader. I don't want to say he did a bad job, I just think they clearly cast the wrong person for the job. Anyways, after a boom, bam, bop, we jump back to Earth with Mr. John Call of Duty Man. Is he bereft of any kind of personality and generic as fuck so you can use him as a self-insert? I mean, probably, but that's if you want to give the writers the benefit of the doubt. Oh, also Admiral Rains is here, and for being an admiral, he's not very important to the story. Everyone's gathered in Geneva for Fleet Week, which is a glorified propagandic display of arms, but it's cool because the good guys are doing it. For some reason, Big Man doesn't want to at least warn some people in charge that the Mars boys are up to no good. You can probably guess how that's going to turn out for him. After Man and Big Man finish their conversation, we're introduced to Woman. Salter is kind of annoying. I don't hate her character, she's just the token annoying side character that points in a direction and says, do the thing. After you and Salt acknowledge that throwing a parade with all your big powerful shit in one place is a bad idea during a Cold War, you're introduced to Ethan. Somehow they managed to make a tin can have more personality than any of the human cast, and I can't tell if that's good or bad writing. Ethan was easily the highlight of the game, and maybe I'm just biased because I'm a sucker for robots with a personality, but hey, they gave Chappie a sense of humor and I spent $60 on it. By the way, remember how the SDF really doesn't like Earth? Because Earth doesn't. Now, here's where I want to get into a few issues I have with the opening mission. While it looks good with its big destructive set pieces and is effective at introducing the mechanics of the game to you, it fails to make me give a shit about the mass execution of civilians from both a moral and gameplay aspect. We haven't been given enough time to become invested and learn about the world that this game takes place in. We get a few quick lines of, "Sir, they're executing civilians," and that's about it. You'd think that a catastrophic attack on one of the most powerful military cities on Earth along with mass civilian casualties would warrant some emotion from the game, But yeah, no. This is Call of Duty, and the kids only care about running through the same reskin shooting gallery for the 1000th time. Quick side note about the opening mission. Ethan, a robot who is fresh off the production line, is equipped with a surprising and, more important, worrying amount of anti-robot tech, which can't possibly end poorly. Anyways, back to the opening mission. After stumbling around the city for a few minutes and then storming a tower in a D-Day-like sequence, you finally get to the fun part of the game. Space! After a quick fighter pilot sequence and a fender bender, you land on the big space boat, whose captain died in that fender bender. So, guess who's the captain now? Yippee! Except you and Salter are the same rank, so as to why she didn't get promoted, I don't know. After being made captain of the Retribution, Reyes almost immediately decides he should be on the front lines, a decision that multiple characters rightfully point out is stupid, and Reyes, as the backup captain of the most powerful ship on Earth, just goes, fuck it, because who else would we play as? Oh. Well, while the most important ship in the UNSA arsenal is being piloted by a moron with a personality resembling the Home Depot lumber aisle, how are things going on the other side of the war? I'm sorry, but the Settlement Defense Front as an opposing force is so laughably cartoonish, it makes the Galra Empire look intimidating. In the beginning of the story, the game makes it very clear from the get-go that Adolf Snow is a bad person, if committing mass war crimes in Geneva wasn't ironic enough for you. But for the rest of the game, you kinda just curb stomp the SDF's shit with little to no pushback. Whenever you die in game, you'll be shown some kind of edgy quote from the SDF to really drive home the point that bad guy is bad. And if you're an avid fan of video essays and reviews from any number of creators, you're probably sick of hearing the phrase show don't tell. But if I had a nickel for every time that phrase was applicable to a multi-million-dollar franchise, I'd be on Epstein's guest list. Aside from the first mission, we don't really get to see the SDF make any big moves to put a dent in Earth's war effort. The whole time you're just chasing down the SDF in an effort to gain the upper hand, which you basically have after the SDF attacks Earth for the second time. Same shit, different day. By the halfway mark of the game, there really isn't any incentive to keep going full speed ahead. It's not like the SDF is building a super fucking mega laser cannon to turn the Earth to dust. No, they have 1.5 flimsy invasions and proceed to learn what the phrase fuck around and find out means after the UNSA dismantles their entire militaristic operations in the span of about 48 hours. After the second invasion, you gain control of the most powerful ship in the SDF arsenal after killing Jon Snow, and then proceed to attack a shipyard on Mars. I'll explain later in the video why not only this is poor writing, but also just a brain-dead decision on Reyes' part. Anyways, now that we've covered how poorly organized and written the SDF is, and how much of a brainlet Reyes is, this is the first Call of Duty to be primarily set in space. So how does it do with that setting? Well, let me be clear. I love sci-fi space shit. I grew up with Halo, Destiny, and PlanetSide, so when you mix guns and space, I'll eat that shit up regardless of how good it is, so bias beware. Before I get into how the setting affects the gameplay, I just want to talk about the story aspect of it. Like I said, I love space shit, so the second I got access to the mission terminal that lets you see and read about everything, I spent like 20 minutes reading through the description of every single planet and moon at my disposal, because I wanted to learn about how the UNSA and SDF have inhabited these celestial bodies. And I would have loved to see more of how these planets were built upon and terraformed, but then the game suddenly remembers it's Call of Duty and decides to just start blowing shit up. And it's not like this is Activision's first foray into space, but instead of throwing all their lore shit on some website, they just decide not to really flesh out the world at all. Then again, what was provided is sufficient to what is required for the story, ignoring the fact that it's the bare minimum. For the most part, the setting of, space really doesn't have any effect on the story. Change a few things and set it between two warring nations on Earth and nothing really changes, except from like one mission and the space infantry combat sections, which is a perfect segue into how the setting of space affects the gameplay, which it really doesn't. The only mission where the setting directly affects the gameplay is Operation Dark Quarry, in which you're sent to investigate a mining colony on an asteroid near Mercury that's spinning out of control. Because of the asteroid's proximity to the massive flaming ball of fucking death, you have to time your movement with the orbit of the asteroid. Along with that, this is the only mission to not feature any human combatants. So instead you'll battle against rogue security robots that don't have any weapons, making the mission play more like a zombie game. And yeah, that's basically the only cool gameplay related thing they do with the setting of fucking space. Yeah, there are parts of missions where you float around in space and stuff, but then they proceeded to put fire in space. So while I may be nitpicking, I don't really care. They fumbled the opportunities this setting brought along harder than the Bruins fumbled the playoffs. But Heiko, you may be saying, what about the Jackal missions? And you know what? I'll give that to you. The Jackal missions are some of the most fun I had with this game. Hell, if they developed it just a little bit more and made a whole separate mode around it, I would have sunk a shit ton more time into this game. But honestly, what we got was pretty damn good. Yeah, it can feel a bit limiting and on rails at times, but honestly, I enjoyed it more than the infantry sections, considering you can only play the same formulaic shooting galleries so many times before it gets stale. One thing that sucks about most of these Jackal missions and all the other side missions is that they have no effect on the story. Yeah, you can get new unlocks and weapons and stuff like that from these side missions, but they're completely optional. Nothing you do in these missions changes the main story. Now, is it a reach for me to ask that if you 100% complete every mission and side mission that you maybe get a different ending? No. One mechanic that gets almost completely glossed over in Infinite Warfare is its stealth mechanic. Off the top of my head, I can only remember 2 times in the entire campaign where you're given the option of stealth. And the stealth mechanics don't actually suck for once. They add a nice change of pace to the game and give you an additional way to tackle a situation, which is why it would have been nice to see more of it sprinkled throughout the game, especially earlier on. With the side missions not contributing to the main story at all, you only get 6 main missions if you don't count the short intro segment on Europa. So let's go over the main story beats in these missions and what goes wrong writing wise, because there's a lot. I find it ironic that Infinite Warfare receives so much praise for its story, yet it's its most problematic aspect. One of the main themes of Infinite Warfare's story is the theme of sacrifice, and how costly it can be, although it may be one of the most influential decisions one can make. Yet that person may never get to see if their sacrifice actually worked. The only problem is, I just lied to you. What I actually just described is the story and themes of famous Halo machinima Red vs. Blue. The real theme of Infinite Warfare is lies and deceit. Multiple times throughout this game's story, it's looking like it's going in the right direction, and then hands you a half-hearted and more importantly half-assed story beat with the excuse of, that's just how it be. One of the biggest examples of the game doing this is Reyes' close call with the cold, empty, murderous void known as fucking space, more specifically the outer orbit of Saturn. After blowing up more of the SDF's shit on the moon of Titan, you come face to face with the SDF's largest and most powerful ship. And considering it's been a little bit since we've had a major story beat and that this is a cutscene, you can probably guess what happens next.
Captain, we should eject! No, I can get us in! Impact imminent, sir! We need to bail out now! Mayday! 1-1 is flight aboard! 1-1 inbound!
Hull breach! Compartments 12 through 21 damaged!
Retribution! Break engagement! Fall back!
Multiple signatures incoming! They're hitting us with everything they've got!
Get out of the combat zone now!
No! We're not leaving you behind!
Gator, drop out! That's an order!
Roger, sir! We're coming back, Reyes! We will fight!
Oxygen depleted.
Captain, your suit.
Took a hit in the cockpit. Left arm's torn.
Unsettling report, sir.
Oxygen depleted.
Captain, I can't stop it. What do I do?
Let it go, Ethan.
I can't, sir. You're my commanding officer, Captain. My mission is you.
Who says?
Oh, I'm hardware, sir. Ultimately expendable.
No. You're my brother, Ethan.
You're talking robot, brother.
Affirmative.
Yes. Well, I am the handsome one, sir.
No doubt.
Oxygen level critical.
Looks like this is the end of the line, partner.
I think I'm scared, sir.
Me too.
Captain, stay with me. Sir. Captain. Captain. Captain.
This is probably one of the most emotional scenes in the game, aside from the final act. But that's only because they gave the robot dude feelings and made him say, "I think I'm scared," as you watch your last bit of oxygen drain from your suit and the screen fade to black. If Reyes died right there in the middle of the game, it would actually be amazing for the story. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a single COD game that kills off the main speaking role character in the middle of the game. And if they decided to go through with killing off Reyes, it could have added a whole new element to the story that completely shakes up the game. Continuing the game through the point of view of Ethan from this point forward would give the player way more motivation to want to beat the life out of Jon Snow. Because he made Robo Boy sad, and if the tin can is sad, then so am I. But of course that would be too complex for the average Call of Duty player to handle and would require an ounce of critical thinking, so of course Reyes survives. Now you may be asking how exactly he survives, and he just does.
I don't get it.
With zero explanation other than Ethan is a robot, you wake up in a med bay completely unscathed. Because fuck you, that's why. It's almost insulting how they just fill this massive Deus Ex Machina plot hole with the world's worst instant dry literary asphalt. It's almost as insulting as the writing in Voltron past the second season. The worst part is, they make it seem that this just makes sense by having a character say something ever so slightly thought-provoking about war in space to coat this scene with an air of "you just don't get it." Aside from the game just being pretentious at times, it feels like things just happen for the sake of happening to forward the story, usually accompanied with a flimsy explanation. Like how this killed specifically the two people who needed to die for the story to move on, and literally nobody else on the bridge that was important to the story. Or how Reyes survives all the bullshit that happens to him till it's convenient for the story. Speaking of things being convenient for the story until they aren't, in one of the second to last missions, you kinda just kill the main villain and it doesn't really do anything for the story. Actually, it doesn't do anything at all. Like, the scene completely falls flat, and I genuinely thought that there was gonna be some sort of reveal that this was like a body double or something. Because the scene felt so dull, but no. You just took out the horrifically evil leader of a militaristic nation that slaughtered millions. And now you have control of the most powerful ship in the SDF's arsenal, basically rendering them powerless. So now with the upper hand, Reyes, in his infinite intelligence, launches an undermanned suicide mission on an SDF shipyard on Mars.
Why? 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 Why, oh God, fucking why?
Reyes surviving the cold abyss of space because Ethan is a robot is the most moronic cop-out bullshit in this game, but damn it if this isn't a close second. I understand the explanation of striking while the iron's hot, but if they're caught up on their history, they know that the death of a fascist dictator will usually kind of end the whole war thing. And even if they needed to mount this assault, why not wait and rebuild your fleet a little bit? Maybe, I don't know, be more prepared? You've bought yourself enough time to equate to the annual GDP of Papua New Guinea. You might as well do something with it instead of going in balls first with no protection. But hey, I guess that's what happens when the game's about to end and it hasn't hit its quota for important character deaths yet. The only problem is, once you start throwing important characters into a meat grinder, the death of someone you care about, or at least are supposed to care about, starts to lose some of its kick. One of the most, if not the most powerful scenes of a character death in this game is Kashima's death on Mars. While in every other situation of an important character's death in this game gave you almost no control over the fate of said character, Kashima's death is different. After a mass crash landing of the entire UNSA fleet on Mars, you discover Kashima pinned under a piece of sheet metal. And after lifting the debris off of him, you find the situation is more dire than you thought, and you're forced to take over the duties of applying pressure to his wound. No words can describe how emotionally impactful this scene is, so I'll just let it play out.
I'm going to make it. You have to take over and apply pressure.
I have him. Go.
Sorry, sir. Always have been a bleeder.
Don't worry, Cash. I got you.
I'll probably get a Purple Heart for this, huh? I don't impress the Lieutenant.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she'll love it.
I can still fight.
I know you can, Marine. We're gonna get you back out there in no time.
Brooks, where's that med kit? Let's go!
Is that Marine, sir?
Rest in peace, Cash. I couldn't find anything, sir. It's okay, Sergeant. We tried. Hell of a day, Commander.
Not only seeing and hearing, but if you're playing on controller, feeling the last bit of life drain out of someone you fought side by side with almost the entire game is, in my opinion, more emotionally moving than any other character death in this game. Not Omar, not Reyes, not Ethan. Okay, maybe Ethan, but that's besides the point. I'm biased. The final mission, the assault on the SDF shipyard, sees multiple character deaths of pretty much everyone you cared about, except for like Lewis Hamilton, I guess. And along with all that, you. Reyes finally succumbs to being a shitty leader, and the cold vacuum of space finally remembers that being an unstoppable force of death is kind of its thing. But a lot of these deaths feel very forced and very predictable. It's like they got to the end of the game and realized they needed to improv some ways for people to die in war. I have an idea. What if he gets shot?
Get down, sir!
And with Ethan and Reyes biting the dust, but not salt because someone has to mourn, I guess, the game isn't really nailing home the theme of sacrifice, but rather pile driving it straight into your skull. The final mission also feels really anticlimactic. Like, yeah, it's got all the makings of a final mission, the sappy dialogue, the deaths, etc. But just blowing up a shipyard and then cutting to the war ending really makes you question if it was worth the sacrifice. And that brings me to one of my main problems with this game. What is the climax? Is it supposed to be killing Saline Koch? Well, no, because that was a very hollow feeling story beat, and if you've learned anything about basic literature structure before, I'm pretty sure this isn't following action. Well, then what about the assault on the shipyard? I mean, technically yes, this is the climax, but it really shouldn't be. Like I said previously, this doesn't feel very climactic. It doesn't feel like things are wrapping up because of events taking place. It feels like things are wrapping up because Infinity Ward is running out of time. Could you say that destroying the shipyard was the straw that broke the metaphorical Martian camel's back? Sure, but making that straw the death of Koch would be heaps more logical. Killing off your main villain and then not having that be the climax of your piece of media totally undermines everything that led up to that point. All the time you spent building up that big bad to be the big bad has now gone to waste. Spending all of your time building up something as the climax and then not having it be the climax of your story completely destroys the plot. I think the main theme of this game's story is too many cooks in the kitchen. The creative dissonance between Activision and Infinity Ward is on full display in Infinite Warfare. It feels like Infinity Ward wanted to make a gripping war story about how sacrifice is a valuable tool that one may need to use in dire circumstances, i.e. for the greater good. And Activision wanted the big spaceship to blow up because it appeases the glue-sniffing toddlers who play their games. And so they came to a compromise, or rather Activision probably said something along the lines of, no, it's our game, we tell you what to do. Either way, I know I just spent all that time bitching about how poorly written the story is and how much better it could have been, but I still think Infinite Warfare has one of the best Call of Duty campaigns in the entire franchise. Yeah, it may be a black sheep that doesn't fit in with any other game in the series, but that's what makes it so good. It strives to tell its own story in its own way. And yes, like I've said, I'm biased, very biased. But for as much as I have to say about this game, I still love it and will continue to keep playing through it to relive what could have been.
As you can before SDF takes you out.
I can do both. I can hit the shipyard and drop out of here.
You won't have time.
Watch me.
You got the green light to do whatever it takes. Just finish the mission.
Everybody good with this?
You'll need a crew to launch. We'll have to fight our way on.
Shuttle. Brooks, take him out. Ethan, with me.
No, ma'am. Captain's gonna need my help to get to the command center.
Damn you both. Did you know we were gonna finish this here?
No. I think Mac did.
Well, I guess I'll see you both in hell.
Count on it.
Okay, gentlemen, let's move out! Fair winds.
Gregory, I'm done. Gregory, my Freddy Fazballs. Oh my god, I've been in this fucking sauna for an hour.
Bird up.